Hi everyone, this is Apocalypse. This will be my first video on a specific subject and I believe it's a good one. If there's one lesson I've learned in life, it's that people lie but numbers don't. This data gives evidence to what the men going their own way community has been saying all along. So let's get to it. Global News ran a story last year asking where all of Canada's singles, and they found data from Statistics Canada that shows specifically how many singles there are in Canada based on various age ranges of 5-year intervals. As you can see, the graph shows how many singles there are in each age group based on gender. I've posted a link to the story below. In every age group below 40 years old, the number of single men outnumber the amount of single women. This is really obvious. I mean, we knew this would be the case. These women are still fertile for the most part and have to do less work to get into relationships. After all, women of these ages will generally have men approach them most every day. While conversely, men generally have to put more effort and resources into finding relationships. They don't just come to him in the way they do for women in general. Now let's look at the interesting part. From every year after 40 years old, the amount of single women outnumbers the amount of single men. In looking at the graph, this starts out as a slight edge for men at 40 years old to 44 years old but gets increasingly wider in the older age ranges. The article tries to explain this by saying that women live longer than men, and true, that would account for some of the variation. However, women only live several years older than men do in general, so I doubt that would account for all of the variation, not even close. What could account for the difference then? In my estimation, it's the wall, or more accurately, female fertility. Notice that women have the edge in every age range below 40 years old, i.e. there are less single women than there are single men for every age range below 40 years old. Now notice that for every age range above 40 years old this gets reversed. In other words, for every age range 40 years old and above, the amount of single women outnumber the amount of single men. It's almost like there's some biological function or biological process that actually happens to women at around the age of 40 years old. Oh wait, there is. It's called the average end of a woman's fertility window. Just as women value men with social status and resources, the majority of men value women that are young and beautiful, and once these women ceased being young, their market value in the sexual marketplace begins to fall off a cliff. And this happens exactly at the same time when the average woman's reproductive window is pretty much over at 40 years old. This is hard data that supports exactly what the manosphere has been telling you all these years, that yes, women will have most of the power in the sexual marketplace when they are young and fertile, but once that beauty fades, their market value plummets rapidly. Conversely, a man who's worked hard and became successful, who has taken care of his body, can be more attractive than he's ever been to women at 40 years old. Okay, so we have an excess of single men to women before 40 years old, and after 40 years old we have the reverse. There are more single women compared to single men after 40 years of age. What does this mean? It means most likely that some of these older men are in relationships with younger women. What does this mean? Men win later in life. Men win in the long run. Now let's look at this from a basic economic perspective. In any market, when there is a surplus of supply relative to demand, then the price of that product will go down. Conversely, whenever demand for a product goes up relative to supply, then the price of that product will go up. In all the years under 40 years old, demand of single women exceeds supply, which means the price of single women goes up in sexual marketplace relative to that of a man. But from 40 years old on, this reverses. Since there is more demand for single men than there is supply, the price of single men goes up in the sexual marketplace. And since the supply of single women is higher than demand for single women, the price of single women in the sexual marketplace goes down. Quite simply, this means if you take two people, a man and woman, each a 6 out of 10, that woman will have a higher value than the man will in their 20s, but from 40 years old on, the man will have a higher value than the woman of the same age. Finally, one last point to consider. The statistics in the future will likely even be more lopsided, with more single women relative to single men than there are now due to red pill knowledge. Based off my predictions, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I believe we'll be seeing greater percentages of single women in the next 20 years than we've ever seen in years. It may be an idea to start investing in cat chow. Hope you like the video. If you did, please subscribe.